Jin looked out through the large viewing window of the celestial research vessel. Stars stretched into lines of light as the ship moved fast through space. She pressed her silver-blue hand against the cold glass and sighed. Her people were running out of time. "Researcher Jin, please report to the main lab," a voice called over the ship's speakers. Jin turned away from the window. Her long silver hair floated slightly in the ship's lower gravity. The marks on her temples, 3 small dots in a triangle shape, glowed softly in the dim light of the corridor as she walked to the lab. Inside, 5 other Ilorans were looking at screens full of data. Captain Mun, the oldest among them, motioned for Jin to come closer. "We found something," he said, his voice low and hopeful. "A planet called Earth." Jin looked at the screen. It showed a blue and green planet, much like their home world had been before the disease changed everything. "The beings there, they call themselves humans," said Dr. Han, the chief medical officer. She pointed to another screen showing creatures that looked almost like Elorans, except for their varied skin colors and lack of temple markings. "And their cells have something special." Jin leaned in closer. "Something that could help us fight the fading." The fading was killing their people. It started slowly. First, the glowing marks would dim. Then the skin would lose its color, and finally the organs would shut down. Almost 20% of all Ilorans had died in the past year alone. "Possibly," said Dr. Han. "Their DNA has a protein we've never seen before. It might be able to stop the virus." Captain Mun turned to Jin. "We need to make contact. We need samples. You're our best researcher on alien biology. Will you lead this mission?" Jin nodded without hesitation. She had lost both her parents to the fading. She had seen how the disease had torn apart families, emptied cities, and brought their once great civilization to its knees. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll find out if they can help us." 3 weeks later, Jin stood nervously in a large room on Earth. The human leaders had agreed to meet with the Eloran delegation after their ships had been spotted entering the solar system. The room was filled with humans in formal clothes, all staring at the 5 Ilorans who had come down to the planet's surface. Jin felt dizzy. Earth's gravity was stronger than what she was used to, and the air was thicker. But what made her most uncomfortable was the fear she saw in some of the humans' eyes. A tall human stepped forward. He wore a suit like many others, but his eyes showed curiosity instead of fear. "Welcome to Earth," he said in a clear voice. "I am Secretary Kim, representing the United Nations. We are honored to meet beings from another world." Captain Mun bowed slightly. A gesture they had learned was polite on Earth. "Thank you for your welcome. We come in peace, and with great need." As Captain Mun explained their mission, carefully leaving out the most desperate parts, Jin noticed a younger human standing near the back of the room. He was watching her with thoughtful eyes, taking notes on a small device. Unlike the others, he seemed more interested than afraid. After the formal meeting, the humans and Elorans split into smaller groups to talk. Jin found herself near the young man she had noticed earlier. "Hello," he said with a small smile. "I'm Ta. I work in genetics research." "I am Jin," she replied, trying to copy his smile. Ilorans did not show emotions the same way humans did. "I study alien biology. I guess that means I study you now." Ta laughed, a sound Jin found strange but pleasant. "And I'll be studying you. Our team has been assigned to work with your scientists to learn about each other's biology." Over the next few days, Jin spent many hours in the lab with Tai and other human scientists. They shared information about Eloran physiology while learning about humans. Jin was amazed at how similar they were in many ways, yet how different in others. "Your cells are fascinating," Ta said one day as he looked at samples through a microscope. "They have structures we've never seen before." Jin moved closer to look at his findings. "And yours have this protein that might save my people." Ta looked up at her, surprised. "Save your people? From what?" Jin realized she had said too much. Their leaders had agreed to keep the fading secret until they knew if humans could be trusted. They feared that if humans knew how desperate they were, they might take advantage or refuse to help entirely. I shouldn't have said that, Jin said quietly. But Tay's eyes were kind. You can trust me, Jin. If your people are suffering, we want to help. That's why we're doing this research. Jin looked around the lab. They were alone. The other scientists had gone to lunch. We are dying, she finally said. A disease is killing my people. We call it the fading. She rolled up her sleeve and showed him her arm. Near her elbow, the silver-blue color of her skin was starting to turn dull gray. It's the first sign. I've had it for about a month now. Tay's eyes widened. You're sick. Does anyone else know? Jin shook her head. If they knew, they wouldn't let me be part of this mission. But I'm the best at what I do, and my people need me. What does the disease do? Tai asked, gently examining her arm. It starts by affecting the skin, then moves deeper. Our organs begin to fail. The mind stays sharp until the end, which makes it worse. You know what's happening but can't stop it. Jin's voice trembled slightly. We've lost millions already. Our best scientists think we have less than one generation left before we're extinct. Tai sat back in his chair, looking shocked. And you think something in human DNA might help? Our scans showed a protein in human cells that might stop the virus. That's why we came to Earth. We need to find out if it works and how we can use it to save our people. Jin looked into Ta's eyes. Will you help me? Not just as part of the official research, but help me find a cure before it's too late for me. Tai was quiet for a long moment. Jin feared she had made a terrible mistake by trusting him. Finally, he nodded. I'll help you. We'll need to do our own research outside the official channels. It will be risky. Thank you, Jin said, feeling a wave of relief. Just then, the lab door opened. Other scientists came back from lunch, laughing and talking. Jin quickly pulled down her sleeve to hide the gray patch. That evening, after everyone had left, Tai and Jin stayed in the lab. They took more samples and began running tests that weren't part of the approved research plan. If we can isolate the protein and understand how it works, Ta said, we might be able to create a treatment. Jin watched him work, feeling a strange warmth toward this human who was willing to help her. In her culture, individuals rarely took risks for others outside their family groups. But Tai was helping her even though they had just met. As Jin was processing some data, a sharp pain shot through her arm, where the gray patch was spreading. She gasped and dropped the sample she was holding. Todd was at her side immediately. What's wrong? The fading, she whispered. It's getting worse. Ta helped her to a chair and gave her water. We need to work faster, he said. But we'll find something. I promise. Jin looked at his determined face and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this human, with his kind eyes and brilliant mind, could help save her, and her entire race, from extinction. What neither of them knew then was that the solution would require much more than just scientific research. It would challenge everything both their species believed about themselves and each other. And it would start with the bond forming between them in that quiet lab, under the light of a planet that might hold the key to the Elloran's survival. 2 weeks had passed since Jin told Tai about her disease. They spent every night in the lab after the other scientists left. During the day, they acted normal, following the official research plan. But at night, they worked on their secret project to find a cure for the fading. The gray patch on Jin's arm had grown larger. She now wore long sleeves all the time to hide it. Sometimes she felt pain deep in her bones, another sign that the disease was getting worse. I found something, Ta said one night, looking up from his computer. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they shined with excitement. Jin moved to his side. On the screen were 2 images of cells side by side. One human, one Elloran. Look at what happens when I add the human protein to your cells, Ta said. He pressed a button, and the screen showed the cells mixing. The Elloran cell, which had been slowly breaking down, began to repair itself. "It works?" Jin asked, hardly believing what she was seeing. Ta smiled. "It seems to, at least in the lab. The human protein binds to the receptor sites where the virus normally attaches. It blocks the virus from spreading to new cells." Jin felt tears form in her eyes. This was the first real hope they had found. "Can we make a medicine from this?" Tae's smile faded a little. "That's the hard part. We've tried creating a synthetic version of the protein, but it doesn't work the same way. Something about the natural human protein is different. And just injecting human blood doesn't work either. Your immune system attacks it." "Then how can we use this to help my people?" Jin asked. Ta looked uncomfortable. "There's only one way I can think of. But it's complicated." "Tell me," Jin said. Ta took a deep breath. "The protein needs to be produced naturally inside an Ellerin body. The only way I can see that happening is through genetic mixing." Jin tilted her head. "Genetic mixing. Reproduction," Ta said, his face turning red. "A child that is half human, half Ellerin would naturally produce the protein and be immune to the fading. And the Ellerin parent might gain some immunity during pregnancy." Jin stood very still. On her world, reproduction was carefully planned. Ellerins didn't form romantic pairs like humans did. Children were created when the population needed to grow, with genetic material chosen for the best traits. "You mean I would need to have a child with a human?" she asked slowly. Ta nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Theoretically, yes. But we don't even know if it's possible. Our species are similar, but there would be many challenges." Jin sat down, trying to process this information. "I need to tell Captain Mun and the others." "Wait," Ta said, touching her hand. It was the first time he had touched her directly, not through gloves. His skin felt warm against hers. "They might not understand. They might stop our research or try to take more drastic measures." Jin knew he was right. If the Ellerin leaders learned that reproduction with humans was the only way to save their species, some might suggest taking humans by force. That would lead to war, not salvation. "Then what do we do?" she asked. "We keep working," Ta said. "We try to find another way. And we don't tell anyone yet." Days later, Jin was in a meeting with the other Elorins. They were discussing the official research, which was moving too slowly for their liking. "The humans are holding back," said Officer Yun, the security chief. "They have more advanced medical technology than they're sharing." "I disagree," Jin said. "They're being open with us. These things take time." Captain Mun looked at Jin closely. "You've spent a lot of time with the human scientist, Ta. Do you trust him?" Jin tried to keep her face neutral, though her heart beat faster at Ta's name. "I believe he wants to help us." Just then, Jin felt a sharp pain in her chest. She tried to hide it, but Captain Mun noticed her flinch. "Jin, are you well?" he asked. Before she could answer, the pain grew worse. Jin gasped and fell to her knees. The room spun around her. "She has the fading," Dr. Han said, rushing to Jin's side. "Why didn't you tell us?" As Jin's vision blurred, she saw her fellow Elorins backing away from her. Even though they knew the disease wasn't contagious through air, fear was a powerful force. "Get her to the medical bay," Captain Mun ordered. The last thing Jin remembered before passing out was wishing Tai was there with her. Jin woke up in the Ellerin ship's medical bay. Dr. Han stood over her, looking at readings on a screen. "How long was I out?" Jin asked, her throat dry. 6 hours, Dr. Han replied. "The disease is progressing faster than normal. You should have told us." Jin tried to sit up, but she was too weak. "I didn't want to be removed from the mission." "Well, you are now," Dr. Han said. "Captain Mun has ordered you to stay here and rest. Someone else will continue your work with the humans." Panic rose in Jin's chest. "No. I need to keep working with Ta, with the human scientists. We're making progress." "What progress?" Captain Munn asked, walking into the room. Report. Jin hesitated. Should she tell them what she and Ta had discovered? What if it led to conflict between their species? Before she could decide, a communication alert sounded. One of the crew answered it, then turned to Captain Munn. Sir, the human scientist Tide is requesting permission to come aboard. He says he has important information about researcher Jin's condition. Captain Munn frowned. How does he know she's ill? Please let him come, Jin said. He's been helping me research the fading in private. Captain Munn looked angry, but nodded. Let him aboard, but under guard. 20 minutes later, Tai was brought to the medical bay. He carried a small case of equipment. When he saw Jin lying there, her skin now gray from her fingers to her shoulder, his eyes filled with worry. Jin, he said, moving to her side. I came as soon as I heard. You've been conducting unauthorized research. Captain Munn demanded. Ta stood straight, facing the Ellerin captain without fear. Yes, sir. Jin told me about the fading, and I wanted to help. We've made a discovery that could save her life. And the lives of all Elorins. Explain, Captain Munn said. Tai opened his case and set up a small projector. It showed the same cell images he had shown Jin. The human protein can block the virus, he explained. But we can't simply inject it or create a synthetic version. It needs to be produced within an Ellerin body. How? Dr. Han asked, leaning forward with interest. Ta glanced at Jin, who nodded slightly. He took a deep breath. Through genetic combination, reproduction between humans and Elorins. The room went silent. Then Officer Yun laughed sharply. You expect us to believe this? This is clearly a trick. It's not a trick, Jin said. We've done the research. The children of human Ellerin pairs would be naturally immune. And there's evidence that the Ellerin parent might develop partial immunity during pregnancy. Captain Munn's face showed disgust. You suggest we mate with a lesser species to save ourselves. Lesser? Tai asked, his voice calm but firm. We may not have space travel like you, but we are not lesser beings. And right now, we have something you need. Get him off this ship, Captain Munn ordered the guards. Wait, Jin cried out. With a great effort, she sat up. Look at me. I'm dying. All our people are dying. Are you so proud that you would choose extinction over accepting help from humans? The room fell quiet again. Dr. Han stepped forward. Captain, I believe we should at least verify their research. If there's even a small chance this could work. Captain Munn looked at Jin, then at Tai, then back to Jin. She could see him struggling with the decision. You have 1 week to prove this theory, he finally said. After that, we will consider other options. As the guards led Tai out to return to Earth, with permission to come back tomorrow, he looked back at Jin. I'll find a way to save you, he promised. Jin watched him go, feeling both hope and fear. The solution they had found was not what anyone had expected. It would change both their species forever, and deep inside, she wondered if the strange feelings she had begun to have for Tai were real, or just her desperate hope for survival. That night, alone in the medical bay, Jin looked out the window at the earth below. Somewhere down there was the key to her people's survival. Not in a medicine or a technology, but in the very bodies of the humans themselves. And in one human in particular, whose kind eyes and brilliant mind had given her a reason to keep fighting against the fading that threatened to take her life. The next 5 days were filled with tests. Jin stayed in the medical bay of the Ellerin ship, growing weaker each day. Ta came aboard every morning and left late at night. They worked with Dr. Han to prove that their theory was right. Look at this, Dr. Han said on the 5th day. She pointed to a screen showing Jin's blood samples. The cells with Ta's genetic material are fighting the virus. Captain Munn looked at the data with a frown. But this is just in a test tube. We don't know if it would work in a living body. Jin looked at Ta. His eyes were dark from lack of sleep, but he still smiled at her. Over the past weeks, she had learned to read human facial expressions. She knew Tai was worried but trying to look brave for her. "There's something else," Ta said. "We found that when Jin and I work closely together, her symptoms seem to slow down." "What do you mean?" Captain Mun asked. Dr. Han pulled up another chart. "Jin's condition got worse much faster when Tai wasn't here. When he's with her, the disease slows down. We think there might be some kind of connection happening. Maybe through pheromones or some other chemical process we don't understand yet." "This is all theory," Officer Yun said from the doorway. He had been watching their research with suspicion. "And our time is running out." Jin knew he was right. Captain Mun had given them 1 week to prove their theory. Tomorrow would be the last day. "I have news from home," Officer Yun continued. 3 more cities have been hit by the fading. Thousands more are sick." He looked at Captain Mun. "The High Council is demanding action. They've sent more ships. They will be here in 2 days." Jin felt her heart sink. More ships meant the Ilorans might try to take humans by force if they couldn't get help through peaceful means. "What kind of ships?" Captain Mun asked. "Battle cruisers," Officer Yun said. "They are prepared to do whatever is necessary to save our people." The room went quiet. Todd looked at Jin, his face pale. He understood what this meant. "There has to be another way," Ta said. "War between our species would be a disaster for everyone." "Then find it," Captain Mun said. "You have 1 more day." That night, Jin and Tai were alone in the medical bay. Dr. Han had gone to get some rest. Jin sat in bed, too weak now to stand for long. "The human leaders know something is wrong," Ta said quietly. "They'd noticed the new Eloran ships coming. They're preparing their weapons, just in case." Jin closed her eyes, fighting tears. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't gotten sick, if I hadn't asked for your help." "Don't say that," Ta said, taking her hand. Her skin was cool and gray now, the healthy silver-blue color almost gone. "You did the right thing. And we're close to a solution." "I know it." Jin looked at him. "But what if the only solution is what we found? That our species need to reproduce together. Your people won't agree to that. Mine barely do." Tai was quiet for a moment. "What if we start with just one example, to prove it works?" Jin tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Tai's face turned red, but he kept his eyes on hers. "I mean us, Jin. What if we try to have a child? If it works, if you get better, and the child is healthy, it would prove to both our species that this is the answer." Jin felt her heart beat faster. On her world, reproduction was a clinical process, done in labs for the good of the species. The idea of having a child with Ta, someone she had grown to care for deeply, was both strange and somehow right. "You would do that?" she asked. "For my people?" Ta squeezed her hand. "Not just for your people, Jin. For you." He paused, then added, "I care about you, more than I should for someone I've known such a short time. And I think you feel the same." Jin felt warmth spread through her chest. She didn't have words for these feelings, but she knew they were real. "I do," she whispered. "But what about the others? Captain Mun, your human leaders." "We don't tell them yet," Ta said. "We just do it. And when it works, when you start to get better, then we tell them." Jin thought about it. It was risky. It broke rules on both their worlds. But it might save not just her life, but millions of others. And it would bring her closer to Ta in a way she hadn't imagined possible. "Yes," she said finally. "Let's try." The next morning, Dr. Hand was checking Jin's vital signs when she stopped suddenly. "Something's different," she said, looking at the readings. "The virus, it's slowing down." Jin said nothing, but she felt her face grow warm. She and Ta had spent the night together, following their plan to create a child. It had been strange and wonderful, a mixing of 2 species that had never happened before. "Did you try something new last night?" Dr. Han asked, suspicious. Before Jin could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Captain Mun's voice came over the speakers. All crew to stations. Human weapons have been activated and are targeting our ships. Jin looked at Ta with fear. What's happening? I don't know, he said. Let me contact my people. Ta used the communication panel to call Earth. After a tense conversation, he turned back to Jin and Dr. Han. It's a misunderstanding, he explained. The human leaders saw the new Ellerin ships arriving early. They thought it was the start of an attack. Captain Mun entered the medical bay, his face grim. It's worse than that. Officer Yun has taken a shuttle to the battle cruisers. He's telling them to prepare for an attack on Earth, to take humans by force. You have to stop him, Ta said. If they attack, Earth will respond with everything we have. Both our species will suffer. I'm trying, Captain Mun said. But the High Council gave him authority. They're desperate for a solution. Jin tried to stand, but she was too weak. Captain, there is a solution. Ta and I. We've started the process. And look. She held out her arm, where a small patch of healthy silver-blue color had returned among the gray. It's working. I'm getting better. Captain Mun stared at her arm, then at her face. You and the human. You've reproduced. We've begun the process, Jin said. And Dr. Han's readings show the virus is slowing down in my body. This is the answer, Captain. Not war. I need to think, Captain Mun said, turning away. And I need to contact the battle cruisers. After he left, Tai sat beside Jin on the bed. Do you really feel better? Jin nodded. Something has changed. I feel stronger. She placed her hand on her stomach. And I think it worked. I think there's a new life starting. Tay's eyes widened. Already? How can you know? Ellerin women can sense it very early, Jin explained. It's a warmth here. She guided his hand to her lower abdomen. A new life. Half me, half you. The first of its kind. Ta looked amazed, then worried. But will it be enough to stop a war? Before Jin could answer, the ship shook violently. The lights flickered, and emergency sirens began to wail. What was that? Jin asked. Dr. Han checked the ship's systems. We've been hit. The humans have fired on one of our ships. No, Ta said, rushing to the window. Outside, he could see flashes of light as weapons fired between Earth and the Ellerin fleet. This can't be happening. Captain Mun's voice came over the speakers again. All non-essential personnel to escape pods. We are under attack. Jin grabbed Ta's hand. We have to stop this. Our child can't be born into a war between its parent species. But how? Tai asked, holding her close as the ship shook again. Jin thought quickly. The main communication system. If we can broadcast to both fleets at once, show them what's happening to me. That there's a cure through peace, not war. Ta nodded. Can you walk? With your help, Jin said. Together, they made their way through the shaking ship toward the bridge. They had found the answer to saving the Ellerin species. Now they just had to save both their worlds from destroying each other before their miracle child could show them the way forward. Jin leaned heavily on Tai as they made their way through the shaking ship. Warning lights flashed red in the corridors. Twice they had to stop and hold onto the walls as the ship took more hits. We're almost there, Ta said, supporting Jin's weight. Even though she was feeling a bit stronger, she was still very weak from the fading. When they reached the bridge, they found Captain Mun shouting orders. The main screen showed the battle outside. 3 human ships were firing at the Ellerin vessels. 2 of the new Ellerin battle cruisers were returning fire. Captain, Jin called over the noise. We need to use the communication system. Captain Mun turned, surprised to see them there. Get back to the medical bay. It's not safe here. Please, Ta said. We can stop this, but we need to talk to both sides at once. Another blast hit the ship. Someone shouted that one of their engines was damaged. We don't have time for this, Captain Mun said. But he looked at Jin's face and saw her determination. After a moment he nodded. Fine, Use the emergency channel. It broadcasts to all ships, both ours and the humans. Jin sat in the communication chair with Ta's help. Her hands shook as she pressed the buttons to open the channel. "This is Researcher Jin of the Celestial Research Vessel," she began, her voice weak but clear. "I am speaking to all Ellerin and human forces. Please cease fire immediately." On the screen, they could see that the ships were still fighting. "Why would they listen to you?" Captain Mun asked. "Because I have the cure," Jin said into the communicator. "I am living proof that our species can save each other without war." She looked at Ta, who nodded encouragingly. "I have been infected with the fading," Jin continued. "I was dying, but now I am getting better. The human scientist Tai and I have found that our species are compatible. We can reproduce, and the children will be immune to the fading. More importantly, the Ellerin parent begins to recover during the process." Jin lifted her arm to show the small patch of healthy silver-blue skin returning. "This is the proof. I am carrying a child that is half human, half Ellerin, the first of its kind, and the virus in my body is already starting to die." There was silence on the channel. Then a new voice spoke, Officer Yun from one of the battle cruisers. "This is a lie," he said. "She has been corrupted by the humans. Our only hope is to take what we need by force." "No," Jin cried. "Look at the data. Dr. Han, send the medical readings to all ships." Dr. Han, who had followed them to the bridge, quickly transmitted Jin's latest test results. "The evidence is clear," Ta said, leaning toward the communicator. "This is a simple solution that doesn't require violence. Both our species can benefit from peaceful cooperation." A ship shook again as another blast hit them. "Please," Jin begged, "for the sake of both our worlds, for the sake of this new life that is half human, half Ellerin, stop fighting." On the screen, they could see that some of the ships had stopped firing, but others continued the battle. Suddenly, a new voice came over the channel. "This is Secretary Kim of Earth. We are willing to cease fire if the Ellerin vessels do the same. We want peace." One by one, the human ships stopped their attacks. Some of the Ellerin ships also stopped, but the two main battle cruisers continued firing. "High Commander," Captain Mun said, addressing the leader of the battle cruisers, "I have seen the evidence with my own eyes. Jin is getting better. The solution works. Please order your ships to stop firing." There was a long pause. Jin held her breath, her hand finding Ta's and squeezing it tightly. Finally, a deep voice responded. "This is High Commander Lee. All Ellerin vessels, cease fire. I want to see this evidence myself." Slowly, the firing stopped. The bridge crew let out sighs of relief. "Thank you," Jin said into the communicator. "Representatives from both sides should meet to discuss how we move forward. This can be the beginning of a new relationship between our species." 3 months later, Jin stood by the window in her new home on Earth. Her skin had almost completely returned to its healthy silver-blue color. Only a few small gray patches remained on her back, fading more each day. The door opened, and Ta came in, smiling. "The meeting went well," he said. 10 more Ellerin human pairs have volunteered for the program." Jin smiled back at him. After the battle had ended, both species had agreed to a careful voluntary reproductive program. Ellorins who were sick with the fading could choose to pair with willing human volunteers. Each pair would live together on Earth or on Ellerin ships, and their children would create a new bridge between the two species. "And how is our little miracle today?" Tai asked, placing his hand gently on Jin's growing belly. "Active," Jin said with a laugh. "I think she has your energy." They had learned the baby was a girl. The doctors from both species were amazed at how perfectly the human and Ellerin DNA had combined. The child would have the best traits of both, human adaptability and Ellerin intelligence. Dr. Han called, Jin said. "The latest tests on my blood show the virus is almost completely gone, and the baby is completely healthy. No sign of the fading at all." Ta hugged her carefully. I never thought when I signed up to work with alien visitors that I'd end up saving a species and becoming a father. Jin rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. It was different from an Elloran heart. Faster, stronger. She had come to love that sound. And I never thought when I came to Earth seeking a cure that I would find a home, she said, and a new kind of family. The concept of family was still new to Jin. Ellorans didn't form the same kinds of bonds that humans did, but she was learning, and she found that she liked it. The closeness, the personal connection. She and Ta had participated in a human ceremony called the wedding 2 months ago. Captain Mun had even attended, though he still seemed uncomfortable with the whole arrangement. A small kick from inside her made Jin smile. She guided Ta's hand to the spot. Feel that? She's saying hello to her father. Ta's eyes widened as he felt the movement. Hello to you too, little one, he said softly. Outside their window, an Elloran ship passed by in the distance, heading toward the moon where a joint human-Elloran research base was being built. Beyond that, stars twinkled in the darkening sky, stars that would one day be explored by both species working together, perhaps led by children who understood both worlds. The High Council sent a message, Jin said. They want to give our daughter a special name, one that means bridge between worlds in our language. It's perfect, Ta said, though I still think we should give her a human middle name. Jin laughed. We have time to figure it out. Time was something she had thought she was running out of when she first came to Earth. Now, because of one human who had been willing to help her, to love her, she had a future. And so did her entire species. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met? Jin asked. If you hadn't been assigned to the research team. Ta thought for a moment. I think we would have found each other anyway. Some things are just meant to be. Jin wasn't sure if she believed in the human concept of destiny. Ellorans were more practical, focused on science and facts. But looking at Ta, at the home they had built together, and feeling the new life growing inside her, a life that was saving her and would help save her people, she thought perhaps humans understood some things that Ellorans had yet to learn. I'm glad it was you, she said simply. Outside, the first stars of evening appeared in the sky. Somewhere up there, more Elloran ships were arriving, not for war, but for healing. And on Earth, more humans were volunteering to help, to become part of something larger than themselves. Two species, once strangers, were becoming connected in the most fundamental way possible, through new life. Jin placed her hand over Ta's, both resting on her belly where their daughter grew strong and healthy. This child would never know the fear of the fading. She would grow up in a world where humans and Ellorans worked together, learned from each other, and created a future neither species could have achieved alone. It had begun with a desperate search for a cure. It had led to something no one could have predicted. The salvation of one species through the simple humanity of another. And for Jin and Tai, it had led to love, a word that meant the same thing in any language on any world.